Welcome back to another video. In this one we are going to look at a topic that was quite a popular one on our blog over the last couple of years, so how to test CSS selectors using the Chrome Developer Console. This won't be a super extensive guide to CSS selectors, but it will give you some helpful tips to save some time whenever you are setting up tags in Google Tag Manager. Hopefully it will save you some time and it will make your workflow and your processes a little bit quicker. So let's get stuck into this. I will start by going over very quickly what CSS is, but I suspect if you've clicked on this video, you probably already know the answer to that. So what is CSS? It is a styling language for websites. So it is something used by developers to write the code that allows them to style different elements on a page or on any given website. It allows them to separate content from design, so it means that they can work on various different styling elements and update those on the fly or update those over time without worrying too much about the content. The two can be separated and distinct in that way. It's the main thing that dictates the appearance of all of the elements on a website or that are displayed on screen at any given time. The styles can cascade from multiple sources, so it could be browser defaults, user styles, author styles, specific rules determine which styles apply at any given moment. Probably the most significant or the most important aspect of CSS is that it allows for super efficiency and consistency across a website. Showing my age a little bit here, but I remember back 20 odd years ago whenever I started sort of building websites and playing around with HTML, before CSS was really a thing, or certainly before it was a common thing. You would have styled individual elements individually. You would have written some script that would have assigned a font to a given paragraph. You would have then had to update that across each different paragraph, or if you wanted to underline things, you would have underlined individual words and so on. CSS allows developers to be much more efficient now, where they can say, for example, if all of the buttons on your website, you want them to all be green or all look the same, you would do that in CSS. So it means that you don't have to apply the styling to every single individual button on your website. You can set the rule for that once, and then it will be applied across every single button on the site. It also means that then if you want to change something over time, if you want to change the color of your buttons, for example, from green to red, you don't have to then go in and find every single button on your site to change the color of it. You can just go in and change it on your CSS, on your style sheets, and that change will be automatically applied across every single button. So it's much more efficient for developers building websites and for applying changes, going forward, to have one sort of place where they can go and reference all the different styles that are applied across all the elements. Because most websites have consistent elements across multiple pages, and this allows them to be much more efficient at managing that. The last thing I think is important to know about CSS in general is that it allows for different elements to be displayed differently on different screen sizes. So if you want something to be displayed in a different way on mobile, say you want to have your menu open and displayed to everyone on desktop, but you want to have it minimized by default on mobile, it allows you to do that dependent on the screen resolution. So those are lots of different use cases for CSS. Again, you probably know what it is if you're watching this video, but this is a bit of a rough example of what it might look like. Body, for example, here we are setting a default font family, background color, and so on. The H1, so if you have H1 headers across the site, we have specific colors for those. Dot container, so you'll see if you hear dot container, for example, dot button, those are elements with the class. So the class is container or the class is button. The dot signifies that it is a class that we're looking at here. And the hash symbol, the hash special message, bottom right, that is an ID. So if an element has the ID special message, then those different style attributes will be applied to that element with that ID. So the hash symbol is an ID, the dot symbol is a class. The others are just elements on the page, like the body, the H1, P for your paragraphs, and so on. So yeah, this is roughly what it looks like if you've sort of, if you've right-clicked and looked at some code on a site, or if you've stumbled across this and wondered what this does or what this is for. This is styling all the different elements that you see on the site. So it's primarily used, as I said, for styling, for developers, for websites being built, to be maintained, to be changed, how they look visually over time. But it's also super useful for Google Tag Manager, because sometimes we want to track clicks on specific buttons or specific groups of buttons. And the same way CSS is used here to group elements together for the purpose of styling, it can also be used to group elements together for the purpose of tracking. So I guess to answer the next question, then, what is a CSS selector? If we look back at these examples here, all of the bits on the left, so the bits before the curly brackets, those are your selectors. So dot button, for example, is a CSS selector. The hash special message is a selector. P is a selector. H1 is a selector. All these different, I guess these are identifiers for different elements on your site, but all of these different things are CSS selectors. A CSS selector is a pattern used to select or find the HTML elements that you want to style or track. It's how you target those specific parts of your web page to apply the CSS rules to them. Yeah, so it's like an address label that tells the browser exactly which elements should receive the defined styles. Likewise, if you're using this for Google Tag Manager, it tells Google Tag Manager exactly which elements you want to trigger your events based on if a user clicks on them. So as I said before, the dot signifies a class. The hash symbol signifies an element with a specific ID. You can chain these together as well in a comma separated string. So say you want to capture multiple elements in one selector, you can do that. If you wanted to have all of the elements that have the class button and all of the elements that have the ID special message, you could write a selector that is dot button comma hash special message, and then that would capture all of the elements that fall under one or the other of those different examples there. So how do we test it? So I guess this is probably why you're watching the video. How do we test it using the Chrome Dev Console? I will just jump in to the Dev Console now and show you exactly how to do that. So just bear with me a second. Okay, so how do we test our selectors in the Chrome Dev Console? As I said at the start, this was one of our more popular blogs, so I'm going to use this blog as the example here. I'll also link this blog in the description underneath the video, and I will also put the code in underneath that we are going to use here for this purpose. So how do we test a CSS selector using Chrome? Let's say we want to use the green buttons here, or this green button as an example. First thing I would do, so how do I identify the class or the ID or the CSS selector in the first instance? Easiest thing to do is right click on the button itself, click on inspect. Then we can see the code behind the button. So you'll see in this instance the button has a class here, so class equals button, much like the examples we were talking about. So that's a good starting point. We can use that. Let's go with class equals button. So how do we check the CSS selector in the developer console? The first thing we do, we can go into the console here. If we click on the actual console tab itself here, we can then type in document.query selector all, open bracket, quote mark there, dot button, close a quote, close a bracket. You can see straight away there at the bottom we have node list 2. So let's hit enter, and we can open this node list and see exactly what buttons that selector has matched, or what elements on the page that selector has matched. So see there the first one, dot button, you'll see there as I hover over it, it highlights the button there on the right, the green button. You can see that's already selected. So that tells us it matches that button, which is the one we were looking for. But it's also matched another button somewhere on the page. So if we scroll down the page and have a look, yeah, so if we highlight this, you can see there that button is highlighted as well. And again, if we right click that and inspect that, we'll see that that does have the same class. That button class there is also applied to this link. So that means that there's two different elements here that are matched by our selector, the dot button selector that we have applied here. If that's what you wanted to do, if you want to track both of those buttons under the one trigger, or the one tag that uses the one trigger in Tag Manager, then that's great. You can use that selector. But if you only wanted to select this one button rather than both of them, then you would need to narrow down the logic that you have applied. So how do we do that? Let's right click and inspect this again. maybe we want to look at this purple box to use that as a way to narrow it down. But it's the first purple box because the other one is also in a purple box, right? So so what we need to do is use this selector instead. So same code, use the document.query selector all, and then in this instance we're using .purple box because it's in a purple box, and then the nth child 1 here signifies that it's the first purple box on the page, and then we're just looking for the dot button element within that box. You see this time the node list just has the one element in it. The length is 1, which means there's only one button that matches, and when we hover over it this time, it's just that button that gets highlighted. So we know now that this selector here is only relevant for this one button. So if you only wanted to track that one button, that would be the selector that you would use. If you wanted to track both buttons or all of the buttons on the site, then you could just use dot button here. So it really depends what you're trying to do. If you're trying to narrow it down to one specific element, then you've got to be really specific. If you're trying to capture clicks across all of the buttons, then you can be a bit more open and use something like dot button. But it depends entirely on your website, on your use case, and what you're actually trying to do, what the purpose is of the CSS selector in the first instance. So that is how to test it in the dev console. How do you then use it in Google Tag Manager? That would be the next logical question, I guess. And this will be a really quick, just a quick example of how you would use it here. We can do a more detailed video in the future. If this is of interest, please do let us know in the comments below. But yes, to use this in Google Tag Manager, you would create a new trigger. You would create a new trigger like this by clicking on new here. Let's just call this button clicks. You would use the all elements click type, and then you say this trigger fires on some clicks. You would always use click element. You always have to use click element if you want to use a CSS selector as your operator here. So you always have to use click element, match a CSS selector. And then if it was just the first one, you would just type in dot button here and save that. That would fire a tag on any element that has button as a class. Or if you wanted to use the longer one, you could copy this full string here and paste it in here. And that, in that case, would only match that one specific button on the site. Then you save your trigger as usual, attach it to your tag that you've set up to track that, and that would be you good to go. So hopefully this will save you some time in Google Tag Manager. It means that you won't have to go in and use trial and error. It means that you don't have to go in and out of preview mode 10 times to make sure that you've got the right CSS selector for your trigger. You can just make sure that you've got it right in your browser first. Then you can just copy and paste it into Google Tag Manager, and that will hopefully speed things up for you. If you'd like us to do a more detailed video on CSS selectors, how they can be used in Google Tag Manager, or any other topics really, please just let us know in the comment section below. If you've enjoyed this video, please follow us on our socials. They are the same across all channels, so it's at GlowMetrics everywhere. If you enjoyed this video as well, please do go across to glowmetrics.com and sign up for a free account on our resource hub. It is where you will get first access to this type of content, and we put it up there first for those users that have an account, and then we open it up eventually on YouTube. But if you want first access to this type of thing, please do go join the community over there. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.